I'm Tay here with Justina and Olivia from the Nanini Teen Advisory Board. We are excited to be with Krystal Marquis at the Tucson Festival of Books to talk about her book, The Davenports. Hi, Krystal. First off, can you tell us about The Davenports for listeners who haven't read the book yet?
Hello, thank you for having me. The Davenports is a young adult historical novel set in 1910. It follows 4 young girls as they fall in love for the first time and make decisions based on their parents' expectations and what they want for themselves in the future, and that first burst of first love. And I think that it is really relevant in age because we all have had times where we disagree with our parents' wishes. So it's a good exploration of what it's like in that time for Black Americans who found some wealth and success, but also are working towards a different future.
What was the main inspiration or motivation for writing this specific novel?
So I had read an article on the Smithsonian's website. It was about C.R. Patterson. He was a man who had escaped enslavement and started a carriage company in Ohio. And it was his son that turned it into an automobile company. And the tagline for the article was, "First and only Black-owned automobile company in America." And I thought that was really fascinating. I wanted to learn more about it. And it was during that research I found out that he had 3 daughters. And I wondered what their lives were like. What was it like growing up after the Reconstruction and before Jim Crow, and being a Black family that had wealth and some modicum of privilege, and what life for those girls would have been like. So The Davenports is me answering that question with some of the research that I did during that time.
Cool. Can you explain your writing process to us?
It's a little chaotic. So I work very weird hours, usually afternoons, and I get home after 10 p.m., 11 o'clock at night sometimes. So I'll take a shower, make a coffee, have some dinner, and then write. My most productive hours are midnight to 3 a.m., which is very, very crazy. And I quite frequently pull all-nighters. No longer in college, but that still sticks. And I kind of write until I'm tired or until I get stuck and think tomorrow is another day.
Mm-hmm. How did the story change through the editing process? Were there any big changes to the storyline?
Yeah. So in the earliest draft of The Davenports, Olivia, who's one of the Davenports, her best friend, Ruby, who is another wealthy Black family, the 2 girls were rivals. They were competing for bachelors. It was a snarky kind of Regina George kind of relationship. So that was the biggest change. I got 2/3 of the way through the book, and I didn't like writing catty girl characters who were competing with each other. And so when I started from the beginning and I rewrote it, I had them as best friends whose parents grew up together, who raised them together, and just that supportive female friendship that I enjoy with my friends.
I love that.
How did the cover art evolve for this book? And were you able to give input?
Yeah, I think I was very lucky that I was able to give some input. I heard a lot of authors, they just get, here's your cover, and move on. But the team at Penguin Random House did a really great job. They sent me 3 different artists that they had in mind. I got to pick the artists that I felt their artwork connected to me best. And then me and the artist would go back and forth. They would send me sketches. I would get mock-ups of the cover. I would say, hey, can you use this as a tagline instead, or move this around? So I felt that I got a lot of say in the cover, and that was really rewarding because it makes us feel more yours when you can look at it and know that you had a hand in it.
It's really nice. When and how do you decide which characters would ultimately end up as a couple?
So that one was tough. I think in the beginning I had a pretty good idea of how I wanted things to end. I think the harder part was where to break the couple's their romantic arc, because this sold as 2 books. So I knew that not everyone could get their happily ever after at the end of book 1. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of hard deciding which couple would reach that at the end of book 1. And who would have to struggle a little bit more before they found their match.
During the book, John's feelings seemed a bit erratic, swapping between being jealous over Ruby while having feelings for Amy Rose. Can you walk us through the journey of his emotions?
Oh, I feel like John was confused because I was confused. I think I'm very much team John and Amy Rose. I really, really love the two of them together. But I think also for him, he had that struggle of trying to please his parents and do what they want him to do. So he tried to make it work with Amy Rose, and then they had like a past history. They had a little bit of flirtation the summer before. So I think for him, it was that comfort and like that easy choice that was pulling him in one direction, and Amy Rose, on the other hand, was the choice of his heart that he really wanted to follow.
I love John and Amy Rose together, so that makes me happy.
Yeah.
What was the most rewarding and challenging part about writing this book for you? Especially since it was your first book.
Yes. I think the most challenging part was getting it to a point where I felt comfortable with it. My background isn't in English. I didn't get an MFA. Writing was a hobby, so I kind of dealt with, am I doing this right, a lot of times. So for me, it was really challenging getting over like that and just telling a story that I would enjoy reading, that my sister and my mom would enjoy reading. Like, we read a lot and we'll discuss books and we'll have like, no, this is how it should have happened. So for me, it was trying to create something that would kind of mimic that relationship I have with books and with my family. And I don't know. Yeah, that's basically how I felt. That was challenging, but it was also a lot of fun.
Yeah, very cool. And we, like you mentioned before, we're getting to know this Black family at a time that could be somewhat difficult and where, they were somewhat privileged to have money. And we see a little bit of the racism in the beginning of the book and throughout, but I'm wondering, was it challenging for you to address racism in the book? Was that something that you went into this knowing that you wanted to kind of face a little bit?
Yeah, I wanted to include it in the book, so I did go into it with very specific ideas of how I wanted to showcase it, but I also didn't want it to be the main focus of the book. I wanted it to be more of like any book that you would pick up, whether it had Black characters in it or not. I think it's important to show the full spectrum of situations that like Black people would experience during that time, and in some cases still do. But I didn't want it to be a story that focused only on that. I wanted it to focus on like finding a boyfriend and, I want to run a garage instead of getting married. I wanted it to be about problems that can be more relatable and also things that highlight more Black joy.
You did a really good job of that. It was not the main focus, and I think you really get drawn into the characters.
But piggybacking off of that, how do you hope the book will contribute to the conversation surrounding racism in society today?
I hope that it gives a dip of the toe in the water for some people. I think the smaller microaggressions might be overlooked if you don't necessarily experience it. So I think that it's introduced in a way that I hope sparks conversation and can give people another glimpse into kind of just different experiences. I think some of the instances of racism have either been experienced by me or people that I love. So having that in there and having that representation was really important. But I also feel like it's presented in a way that promotes conversation to people who may not have experienced it. And I think that is my biggest hope, that it does that, creates more conversation and allows for more books to delve into that more deeply.
So you mentioned this a little bit, that some of that, those instances that they experience come from your personal or family friends, and so we were kind of wondering, how did your family influence you writing this novel?
Yeah, So I think the sibling dynamic influenced the book a lot. I'm the oldest of 4, and we're very much texting and talking and sharing a lot. And I think at the beginning of the book, the Davenports are all in their own little bubble. So having them come back together as the story develops is really great. I like the scenes where John and Helen are teasing each other when they're working together. I feel like that's very similar to how I am with my siblings. And I think that's that part comes a lot from my family. And I think also the friendships. I think with siblings, friendship changes sometimes. It evolves from I'm your older sibling, you have to do as I say, into more of a closer relationship where you are looking to each other for advice and leaning on each other for support. So I think that was like very fun for me to explore.
Speaking of how your family influenced your writing, are there any of the characters that are like directly inspired by people who you know?
I don't think direct inspiration, but I do think pieces of other people's personalities, of my personality, have made their way into the characters. I think that helped me create people who are more complex and grounded, and choosing the parts of people that I love to include in those characters who I also love.
Do those people know that there's pieces of them that were inspired into those characters?
I think they know when they're reading it, yeah.
So, what was your reaction when your book became a best-selling novel?
I don't even know if it's like fully sunk in yet. It's been like over a year since the book came out, and I think I found out the night before it was going to be announced that it was going to be debuting on the New York Times list. And I think I opened it as I was like walking into the kitchen, and my mom was like cooking, and I was like, shut up. And she was like, I didn't say anything, and that's rude. You shouldn't talk to me like that. And I was like, no, not you, my phone. And she's like, your phone's also not making any noise. So then they showed her the email, and like she screamed, and then I screamed, and then we hugged, and then my sister came downstairs, and she's like, why are you all screaming? And it was just so great and so surreal, and I think sometimes it still doesn't feel completely real, but I think it just makes me happy that like so many people have enjoyed the story that I created. And I just think about how many more people are learning about C.R. Patterson and like some of the other public figures the characters are based on. I think around the same time I was writing it, Madam C.J. Walker, her story had gotten a lot more attention. Netflix did a movie docuseries about her. So I thought that was really interesting that more public figures who had achieved success during that time were getting more attention. So I thought that was really great.
So we're kind of wondering if you would be open to a film adaptation or TV show. There's so many series out there, right, that are this like historical romance type thing. I feel like this could fit into that.
Yes. So actually on Thursday it was announced that a subdivision of MGM and Amazon Prime are going to option it for a TV series. Yeah, so it was pretty exciting to find out.
Yeah, congratulations. That's
Thank you.
super exciting. Brand new news.
Yes.
So, yay.
I hadn't heard about that yet.
So, you mentioned that you read an article about C.R. Patterson that gave you the idea for this novel. Was this like the spark that made you want to write, or did you want to write something before then and this was just the idea?
So I had written 2 manuscripts before this. They were science fiction. I want to say the first one doesn't exactly count because it kind of felt like Dark Angel X-Men fan fiction, but it was a lot of fun to write. And the second novel, the second manuscript I was working on, it actually got me my agent. So my agent was working on trying to sell that one while I started working on this one. So it just so happened this one got picked up first, and I'm really excited about it. And yeah, that article was the inspiration for that story.
Were there any other inspirations you had as a child, and how did they inspire you?
So as far as other books or authors?
It could be authors, other people, or other books.
So one of my favorite book series is the Dear America series, And I loved reading the journals of these girls growing up at different times of American history and what their problems were. I think one of the things that I like most about it is that they still dealt with bullying or like an annoying sibling or, you know, struggles in school. So it didn't really matter what time period the girl grew up in. There were still like some parts of her life that made sense to me. But then I also really liked learning about the different time periods that they grew up in and the different struggles and fights for equality or even like having a voice in their stories. So I think a lot of that inspired the Davenports. And also one of my favorite authors, Elizabeth Peters, she writes historical fiction as well. And her character, Amelia Peabody, inherits all this money and she decides she wants to be an Egyptologist, even though women aren't allowed to be Egyptologists. And she's like, I don't care, I have the money, I'm moving to Egypt. So I always thought that was really interesting, like to have a feminist during that time. She kind of reminds me of Helen, where she's headstrong, she knows what she wants to do, and she's just going to go do it, and she has fun, and you know, she still gets to fall in love and have a family in the big picture. But I think her literally chasing her dreams was really inspiring.
So what are your future goals?
My future goals is to continue writing. I really enjoy it. I work in environmental health and science, which is the complete opposite of creative writing, but I do enjoy it. If I can continue doing both, that'd be a lot of fun. I'd be happy with that.
How do you manage being a writer while working another full-time job?
Delicately and with little sleep. Yeah. Yeah, my days are pretty long, but I don't need a lot of sleep. Usually after 4 hours I wake up and then I can't go back to sleep. Prior to writing and my full-time job, I was in EMS. So, you know, you could get an ambulance call at any time. So you sleep heavily and quickly for as long as you can, and then you're up and at it and fully alert very quickly. So I think that kind of altered my ability to stay asleep for long periods of time. But I think it's great because now I can write when it's nice and quiet and there's no distractions, and I have all these fun ideas that I can pick at.
Yeah, that's crazy. If I got 4 hours of sleep, I would probably not operate for the full day. So that's really nice you have that.
Yeah.
So last question. We're hoping maybe, do you have any spoilers you can kind of, or hints I should say, for your next book that's coming out in November?
Yes. So the sequel to the Davenports, More Than This, will be out in November, and it takes place about 2 or 3 weeks after the events of book 1. And the girls are kind of dealing with some of the decisions that they made at the end of the book. And they're planning somebody's wedding. And then there's a new bachelor entering for some competition. So, you know, everyone is on a new playing field, basically. Except for the couple at the end of the book that ended up together. They're pretty solid. Yeah.
Exciting. That's very exciting. It just makes me want to read it more. I know.
Great. I'm excited.
Very cool. Thank you so much
you.
for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.